In this episode of the Rockets Chop Pod, I sit down with Alykhan Bjijani, and we chop it up about the Houston Rockets, talk a little bit of ball, a little bit of X's and O's. Really respect this guy, so I'm really excited for you guys to be able to hear our conversation. And while we were recording the episode, we got literally the tweet from Adrian Wojnarowski that Kyrie is requesting a trade out of Brooklyn. So definitely check out my reaction to that. Then check out the conversation me and Alykhan have right after that. Tap into the show. I think you guys are going to love this one. Let's go. For this podcast, we want to highlight a brand new drop from one of our Chop Shop supporters, and that's my man Big R. Check out the new book by Tracy Badua. This book is called This Is Not a Statement, and this book is a great book. I have two copies. Literally bought one for my 18-year-old niece. And this is a book that is great for young people that are about to enter college. So if any of you guys have children or any family members that are still exploring that time in their life that we all remember how confused we were and trying to find our identity in this crazy world, the book is called This Is Not a Personal Statement by Tracy Badua. Check it out. It's a great gift to give to somebody as a graduation gift, or just somebody that you know is about to enter into the college world and is trying to define who they are in this crazy world. So while me and Alykhan were filming the segment that you're about to listen to after this, literally Adrian Wojnarowski dropped the bomb alert. I'll call it a bomb alert because it's nothing really happened, but dropped the news that Kyrie was requesting a trade out of Brooklyn. And then, over the next few kind of 2 hours afterwards, it came out that he was requesting a trade prior to the deadline. And that, then it leaked that there were 3 teams in the running: Lakers, Dallas, and Phoenix. Obviously we've seen this before. A couple months ago in the summer, you had Kyrie and KD basically on the outs. Then it seemed like it was mended, and all of a sudden they were back in and winning, and they're a pretty good team right now, kind of one of the best teams in the East. It's kind of an odd thing, but it seems like it's stemming from some of the contractual wording and some of the verbiage that the Nets were trying to propose in his extension. Obviously, we know he is a controversial player with some of the off the court things that he's done and gotten into. So I guess, there's probably some reluctance on their part to be able to do a long-term commitment without some protection on their part. And, I would see it as similar to what we see with Kevin Porter Jr., but in a grander extent for them. So I can't blame them for doing that. And obviously, it's prudent for them. It's prudent for them to try to protect themselves. The question then is, how does this impact the Rockets? This news in a vacuum, to me, it's still 50-50. I see people doing victory laps about, oh, yay, our picks. To me, this doesn't mean nothing because we haven't heard any news about Kevin Durant. That's really what it comes down to. Kevin Durant is the determinant to me of what the value of the picks going forward is going to be for Houston, as long as he's healthy. Now, if Kevin Durant, God forbid, suffers like a major injury and he gets hurt, then yes, then we could pop bottles and, pat our backs until 2027. But Kyrie being on the Nets or not being on the Nets, to me, is not that much of a determinant of their success. There's some people that would argue that him being off the team is actually a blessing for them, because you got to think about, well, what does Kyrie fetch you back? Does it give you better players, or maybe not, because he's really one of the best players in the league? But are you going to get a more stable player? Do you get an aggregate of players that are able to support Kevin Durant? Do you get picks back? Some of the rumors, let's think about the teams that we are, that we've heard that are going to be part of the sweepstakes. So you're talking about a Dallas team that could they've offered Finney Smith as a possible trade chip for them. You also have Dinwiddie out there. Obviously, we know Christian Wood. They have other guys on the roster that they could aggregate and send over to Brooklyn in order to get Kyrie. Maybe you get some draft capital back with that as well. Then you look at, the Lakers, which to me, I think Kyrie's going to be a Laker. If I had to guess, I think Kyrie's going to LA. The Lakers have their 27 and the 2029 first round picks. And would they be willing to part ways with that? And to me, what that looks like, I don't think Russ goes back to Brooklyn just because of the KD and Russ situation. But I think there's a third team that could be involved. Bleacher Report this morning basically, dropped a story saying that there's been some discussions between the Utah Jazz and and the Lakers about Russell Westbrook. I don't think that isn't a coincidence. I think that the Jazz are probably a great third team that will be able to eat Russ's salary for LA to free up the space to bring a Kyrie and another guy in, and then maybe the Lakers have to give up some picks to Utah for doing that, a pick or so, and then Brooklyn would get back the players that Utah has. Which let's give credit to Danny Ainge. Good job to him being able to raise the value of the players he had at the first year of a rebuild. And now you can see why that's valuable, because when you want to be you want to get involved in some action, it's good to have players that have value around the league, because then you could put yourself in prime position. Utah also has a trove of picks, 15 first-round picks over the next 5 years, so they're not short of picks. So I'm sure they're going to be making those calls for them. So that's another outcome. Then you also have the Phoenix Suns, which to me is as far as a win now, that would be the best case scenario for Brooklyn. Phoenix Suns, you have Chris Paul there. And if they were to move off of Chris Paul, I could see a KD and Chris Paul alignment being a really deadly combo for about a year or two. I think the age does come into play. But if you remember last season, Kevin Durant really struggled in the playoffs without a facilitator there. And Kyrie is not a typical point guard. He's more of a combo guard and a scorer. And the fact that KD did not have that floor general to help set him up really was exposed. And I think that getting a Chris Paul is literally, to me, hand in glove fit for Kevin Durant. To me, that would make them one of the favorites in the East. I don't give a damn how old Chris Paul is. We know his track record. When he's on the team is a contender, and he makes teams win. And I think for him, his scoring would not really be necessary when you have some of those shooters there in Brooklyn and you have Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant can do the scoring load. Chris Paul can facilitate at the highest level possible. And I think that would be a great move for Brooklyn in order for them to flip those for Kyrie. I don't know if it would be a straight up trade. I'm sure there will be other assets involved, but that's definitely something. But if I had to guess, I would say it would be a 3-team trade because the Lakers have to make room, and I don't see Russell Westbrook going to Brooklyn. I just don't see the reunion happening. Now for Houston, what should we do in this situation? Now, some people are going to say stand pat. I'm not one of those people. I think the fact that we own Brooklyn's picks gives us a special kind of power over them that other teams don't. We have we own their destiny essentially because we own their picks and there's some of their swaps. If they tanked, then it wouldn't be a benefit to them. So that's an option of them reshuffling their deck to try to get back into being a contender maybe in a few years that's taken away from them because we own their picks. So the fact that we own their picks, the fact that they can't tank, it really limits what they could do because they have to technically try to field a competitive roster every season until the Rockets are done with them. So what does that mean for Houston? That means that when we relieve a first-round pick, let's say if we said we'd give them a pick for something, to them, not only are they getting a pick back, they're getting their pick back and they're getting their destiny back. They're getting the ability to make an organizational decision saying that, hey, this year we can be bad, we can fail and, put ourselves in position for the next Wemby, the next Scoot in a future draft. So having that leverage, I think Houston needs to be active in this time period as it relates to Brooklyn. Any actions, any movement that happens, Stone needs to be on the phone calling those teams, calling Brooklyn, calling LA, calling Dallas, and finding out what are the terms of those deals and how can we get involved to either be a middleman to facilitate something or somebody that we could exchange a pick for them for more picks. And what I mean by that is that, so imagine that if let's say they were able to get maybe a good a pick or two for sending Kyrie out. And if in that case, what can we get for that? So if a team gave them 2 first-round picks, maybe they're protected, maybe they're not. If we said that we would relieve them from the pick swap, just that pick swap, would it be worth it to Brooklyn to have their own destiny in their hands for a season and be able to tank than taking 2 protected or maybe lightly protected future first from like LA or something like that? That's what I'm thinking. So it doesn't have to be us taking a player or doing anything necessarily crazy, but it's just relieving them maybe in the future, maybe in the near future. Preferably, I think the most valuable ones are going to be the ones that are closer by, because they're just more defined because we don't know what they're going to be. But giving them the ability to own 1 year where they can tank or do whatever they want, I think is going to be more valuable than them having future picks from a team that they would have to wait to see what happens while they don't have their own picks. So, and the reason I'm advocating for this, because if you had told me this like 2 seasons ago, I'd be like, nah, let's just stand pat. But as every season gets closer, these Brooklyn picks become more defined. And every year that we go into a new season, they lose value because the team that the Nets, and you guys are going to be able to learn this, GMs can put together a roster that's not going to convey into a top pick that's going to be premium, right? And you got to remember these picks came from trading James Harden. We've yet to see any return for them that equals what was going out. We miffed the player part of it with the Jared Allen stuff, the Victor Oladipo stuff. So these picks, at least you want one of them to hit, whether it's hit via draft or be able to fetch you a player. So if you're getting to the point where they're losing value as each season comes up, because right now the way the Nets are sitting atop the East, that 2023 pick swap is useless. It's not going to convey because we're so bad, and they're one of the best teams in the East right now. Even if Kyrie stops playing and KD's still there and they still have some vets on the roster, they're going to win more games than us. And that pick swap is not going to convey. So that's what I'm afraid of, is that as each season comes, we're going to just lose picks and just be losing swaps. So if you can relieve them and say, hey, we'll give you a swap if you give us this first round pick back, a real tangible first round pick for their swap, because that swap to them is destiny, right? A swap to them is destiny. So would they be willing to bite on that? That's what Stone needs to find out. This doesn't mean make any dumb moves or any boneheaded decisions about the roster, or try to go all in now on winning and whatever. No, it just means be diligent, do your due diligence, be prudent, make the calls you have to, find out every piece of action that goes on with this Kyrie situation, and see how can we leverage it to our advantage. How can we flip a Brooklyn pick or swap into a future pick or future picks for us in our benefit? Because to me personally, I believe they want their destiny more than them just relying on maybe what Phoenix is going to look like in 2026. Maybe Phoenix is a bottom three team that's in the, gets a top 4 pick and they went out on that. Maybe not. Maybe Phoenix is competitive. GMs, when they try to win, they can win. They're not going to be playoff contenders, but in order for them to screw the team that owns their picks, all they have to do is be a middling team. And, is it worth trading your franchise player for a 16th or 17th pick? Maybe if they're Sengun, but hey, I don't think there's a bunch of Senguns in the draft. So that's where I think that, we're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive than we have been in previous years. Doesn't mean you make a move, but I think that you need to be in the know. You need to be connected. And I'm sure Stone is doing that, making your calls and trying to get in on the action and seeing whether we can not push all our chips in because we still want to go big game hunting in the future, but be able to see how can I flip what I have into more. That's what a rebuilding team's supposed to do. Look at the Jazz and how they're doing it. They're running a clinic on flipping assets into more. The way they flip, they're going to flip these players. Y'all just watch as this deadline comes. They already have 15 first-round picks. See how many they end up with by the end of the deadline. That's how you're supposed to do it. That's how you're supposed to use salary. Watch how a bad team is going to take Russ's salary to flip it into more assets. These are the moves that a team makes that knows what they're doing. So that's what I'm hoping the Rockets do. That's what I'm hoping the Rockets do. And if you don't believe me that a team is going to try to win, watch what the Rockets do next year when they know that they can't tank. Just watch how the team improves. It might not be from the guys that we think, but the team is going to improve because they're pretty much have their own internal pressures from that. So y'all let me know about that. Y'all check out the segment with me and Alykhan and just chopping it up about the Rockets. I think y'all are going to enjoy this. But yeah, check it out and let me know what you think about that. Joining us today on the Chop Shop, I got a special guest, Alykhan Bjijani. You guys have probably seen him on Locked On Rockets with our buddy Jackson Gatlin, breaking down some film, and I had to get him on here because that is my talk. He is speaking the language of the gods when he does that, and I love the analytical approach that bro takes to just looking at the Rockets, which if you are somebody that watches film, breaking down the Rockets film is work because it's not the most aesthetic
That's
or beautiful
season,
basketball.
Man. Oh my God, Frank, I don't know how you do it, man. I don't know how you doing it, man.
Dude, Somebody was asking me the other day, like, am I gonna start doing the Texans? And I'm like, oh my god, y'all are trying to kill me, man. That's like, there's no, I can only do one bad team at a time. But
One
yeah,
bad
just
team at a time. Oh, man.
I can't take all that beating. But yeah, definitely wanted to get you on here to talk about, just some ball and just talk about how the Rockets have been looking
Oh,
lately in comparison to the season. Obviously, we know Kevin Porter went down. I think it was on January 11th.
yeah,
Since he's been down, we've seen the touches for the front court touches for Sengun go up a lot.
yeah.
Him and Jalen till Jalen went down, and it kind of switched up their offense. It's not super noticeable, but I have noticed that they are playing kind of what we've been all asking for, using him through the post. Is there something different that you've seen from the Rockets, kind of since that time?
No, Frank, I know you've been doing videos on it and you've been talking about it. And I think we've been seeing similar things. I think one approach that I talked about early in the season that I want to bring up again is using Sengun as a connector, right? And we use the term connector a lot in terms of a guy who can be a glue guy for a team. But when I use the term connector here, I'm talking about on the court and in terms of the specific action. So a guy who connects you from a transition play into a half court set, something that the Rockets really do struggle with, because most times when their guards are bringing the ball up, they're trying to get into a mismatch situation, right, which leads to those pick and rolls for those guards. That's why KPJ and Jalen have so many touches. But with Sengun, and when he has the ball early in the shot clock, or in like the 17, 16-second mark, if that initial pick and roll for, let's say, Dacian Nix, for example, or for Eric Gordon is not there, what do? They give the ball immediately to Sengun, who's at the top of the key, or if he's in the post or high post, to be able to kind of get into the next thing, that connection point to the half court set. And that's when you see, you know what? Let's get him on the block. Or you know what? Let's run something that puts the defense in a situation where they have to adjust or guess where the ball is going to go. And that little bit of, I guess, something that's not the unpredictability is what's really helping this team. They're still one of the worst offensive teams, even after Jalen and KPJ went down. But what helps them, and you're seeing that because opposing players are talking about it, opposing coaches are talking about it, it just puts them in a different spot than they're used to, right? And to be able to move the ball. So that's the big thing for me, is Sengun being a connector on offense, giving him the ball so he's not just doing it from time to time or with the second unit. He's always touching the ball at least once in their 5-out scheme at the top of the key, which opens up a lot more doors. I'm seeing better ATOs from Silas, even though Silas, give him credit. There's a lot of things that Silas, we can talk about him in terms of not excelling at for what we would have liked to see. But one thing he's done a good job with his assistant coaches is draw some good ATOs. And whenever you have a guy who can pass the ball like Sengun or roll and kind of score around the basket with a good touch, you're seeing a lot more effective and more efficient points per possession ATOs out of it too. So I think they're finally seeing it, finally seeing what people have been saying since last season. Let this young man get the basketball. Let him do some things offensively to get the team going.
Yeah, I think that's a fact. And for people that, for the Chop Shop listeners, anybody listening, I've been using the Draymond Green analogy for that connector piece for Sengun, because when people hear play through Sengun, a lot of people assume it's like he's going to take 25 shots and this and that. And I really, if you watch like the Warriors and how they play, Draymond gets, either he's picking it up in transition. And I'm noticing Sengun is starting to do that,
Yeah.
because also that's another way to accelerate getting into your sets and getting to your offense. Or Draymond, when Steph or whoever's bringing the ball up, they just dump it off right to him. And what he does is he gets you to a structured offense in a quicker. And once that initial action, here's where the Rockets have been struggling. Even when they, without Sengun, and when they try to run sets, if the initial set fails, their backup is ISO, and they'll clear it out and bring it out and try to isolate. And it's really, really ugly basketball, because Kevin Porter's a decent isolation player, but Jalen Green, he's really struggles creating space in isolation. And once he is in that mode and he's trying to ISO, and sometimes against a worse mismatch than he started with, it really makes him inefficient, and all those shot chucker memes and stuff are accurate
Frank
at
spin
that
right
point.
now, man. Frank spin.
Yeah, but once, if with Sengun, the one thing I do like that he does, and I think there's some ego part of it in there too, of the guys being able to kind of relinquish that offensive structure to him, is that they are starting to reset within the same group of possessions within that trip down the court, and
Yeah.
which is a big step up for them. I don't know if you're noticing that they're doing second and third actions
Mhm.
within the same kind of group of possessions.
You know, one guy who I think deserves credit, and he's not there yet. He still has points where he chucks the ball up, is Jabari Smith. But Jabari will sometimes not get the ball multiple possessions, which is not I
Yeah.
mean, I don't blame him for putting the ball up in the air because he wants to get a shot going, and he doesn't touch the ball a lot sometimes when he's in the corner. But you know, when he gets the ball, he just sometimes will just, you know what? I got a shorter guy on me. I know I got a high release
Yeah.
point. Doesn't matter how tall the other guy is. I have a high release point. Let me pull it up. But I'm noticing even him with Sengun. See, you know what? This may not be the best shot for me. Let me slow it down. Let me do a dribble handoff. Or let me let Alp come set a screen for me. Or you know what? Let me dump it back down to Alp and move around a little bit. Let me allow the corner guy who may be a better shooter than me move up and let me go fill that lane so that it opens up space for my corner guy to hit a three. You know, they're doing some Jabari's doing some things that's making me see that, you know what, he's understanding right now. If he can help his teammates get involved, it's going to help him get a lot more incorporated within the offense. Now, that being said, I still would like to see Jabari. That's a whole discussion, another question, another whole
Right.
thing. Get Jabari involved in different ways. But to your point about the ego, letting it go for the sake of the team and playing well for the team, Jabari is playing a lot like what I would say KJ has been doing the whole season, is just playing within the structure of the offense. KJ's in the slot. Or the wing area is the best way to be able to cut from whenever you have a post up. Why? Because the team is trying to collapse on that paint. So if you got in the slot, the guy who's helping or defending the slot player is probably going to come over and try to cheat over. And if KJ, he's so good at making those reads, is just going to cut straight through, which is why he gets all those dump off passes. A guy who's been doing a good job of that recently, Tari Eason as well, right? You're seeing those things where guys are seeing, you know what? I can get my points that I want, but I got to be able to play off my teammate, which right now, Alperen Sengun is getting everybody the basketball.
Yeah, that's facts. And yeah, to your point, I was looking at some of the lineup filters, and I posted a tweet showing that the lineups with Tari and KJ with Shangun, that three-man lineup is in 414 possessions is a plus 15.9, and 414 possessions is significant.
Mhm.
And I think that led to your point of a perfect matchup of the skill set that he has, the post dominance that a lot of teams, like we heard the coach from the Wizards speak on them game
Yeah.
planning for him. We've heard Nicholas Batum allude that they had to game plan for him. We've heard Anthony Edwards say that they had to game plan for him.
Mhm.
So we know NBA teams are keying in on Sengun because he's really the
Yes.
head of the snake at this point for the
Yes.
Rockets. And when you have guys like Tari and KJ that are smart and I think and know when to use their cuts and get to the basket to kind of punish the defense for trying to make a hard decision of helping. It really works. One thing I do, it does, I'm kind of curious. I don't know, maybe you might know this, but do you think they tell the starters not to cut when Shengun's in the post to try to generate open threes? Or do you think it's just them not having the collective IQ to be able to cut at the right time?
Man,
And I'm talking about with Kevin Porter, Jalen,
yeah.
Jabari, just
I,
overall.
I think so the way Steven Silas likes to run things, he likes to have guys in a structured position. Like depending on where you're on the court, you're going to put yourself in a position to be able to cut or go. Like if a slot guy, like I said earlier with KJ, slot guys like to usually crash for offensive rebounds. That's why you see Tari most times in offensive possession, especially with the second unit, he's lined up in the slot because a defender is going to ignore the slot when they're trying to box out. Tari can crash and get the offensive rebound, right? So, I do think some of those things are predetermined in terms of role, but I also think it has to do with the fact that KPJ shoots 42%, I think, on catch and shoot threes as of this point in the season. Jalen's a guy who can also knock down some shots. But I would like to see personally Jalen cut because he's so quick. We talk about his first step with the ball. Look at his first step without the ball. This is something I was excited about when he played with G League Ignite.
Right.
When he was moving without the ball when he played with them, right? And moving without the ball doesn't mean that you're moving without the ball to get the ball. Moving without the ball also means you're doing things to open up stuff for your teammates just by cutting through. And if he can cut through, right? For example, attention's going to go on him because they know he's a high flyer. That opens up a Sengun who's honestly one of the few guys on the team who can hit a cross-court pass. If Sengun is on the right side, pass it into left corner, Jalen cuts through on that way, opening that left corner. And if Jalen relocates, he can eventually get the ball. I think those are the things I'd like to see this coaching staff keep instilling in these players. It's not about that first read, right? I think right now the Rockets are so focused on that first read. They're trying to at least get these players to understand, well, when this happens, let me do this, let me do that. But the organic movement, the read and react movement, I think Steven Silas wants isn't happening because these guys can't make that second, third, and fourth read and react. It's that first read, but how can we get these players to make that second, third, and fourth read and react? And I don't know if that's going to happen with Steven as head coach, but that's something that's a big point for me moving forward, especially as an NBA level in late game situations, which the Rockets have given up 10 fourth quarter leads this season, right? Late game situations, offense is going to get bogged down. You have to read how the defense is playing. When are we going to start seeing the Rockets learn from those mistakes and start reading properly? And not just make that initial cut or initial read, but the reaction that comes from that one teammate making that cut or read.
Yeah, I think, to me, it wasn't a surprise that in the Pistons game, the group that was out there was able to kind of execute late in games, because one of the things that comes with drafting so many of these first round picks, I think we have 7 on the team currently, is you're going to give up that kind of some of those abilities. And if you look at the Rockets roster, I mean, we have a couple of guys that play professionally, Garuba, Sengun, obviously, but most of them are, kind of these bucket getters. And I'm not sure if we are I'm really big on drafting guys out of college. I'm just, being upfront with that, because I feel like a lot of those fundamental aspects of the games are being emphasized in college, because you have to, unless you're like a phenom, you're going to learn, the basics. You're going to learn boxing out, filling lanes, transition, positioning, just the basics. And I feel like our guys don't really have that. So at this point, we're going into the third and fourth year of this rebuild, and you do get concerned because they say they want to start winning at some point, maybe next season, maybe season after that, but you're not seeing some of the baby steps in the macro. I think micro, I've seen development from individual players and collectively, honestly, but the macro turn-ups that you want to see, the steps that you see these young teams that, like Oklahoma City, like Orlando, I'm not really seeing that from the team. And it just seems like we don't have an identity yet.
That's the key.
Yeah.
What is our identity as a team? And one example of those skills, those micro skills you mentioned, I want to bring up is closeouts. When I used to go to games in person, I would always try to ask Steven X's and O's question. And one of the things he's asking about is like, what are some of those techniques or fundamentals that you're trying to work with the team? And he would often point out that he wants to work on the closeout technique, like long closeout technique. And I'll be honest with you, Frank, it's been 2 seasons, 3 seasons for some of these players, and we're still making technique mistakes. And
Jalen is the worst. Just throw that in there.
And that's what concerns me. There's no problem teaching the fundamentals and reinforcing them. But how do we make sure that it's not just being experimented upon in practice, but it's showing itself in games, right? And that's my concern, right? And to your point with college experience, heading into the season, 9 Rockets players were 21 or younger. And most of these guys, I'm going to name them, are getting rotation minutes. Josh Christopher, Tari Eason, Usman Garuba, Jalen Green, KJ Martin, Daishan Nix, Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith, Ty here and there. That's 8 guys, and plus Ty, 9 guys who have seen minutes this season, who are most of them one and done college players. Right? They were not in college long enough to be able to do it. And when you draft 4 rookies in the first round one year, then you draft 3 in the next year, and not one of them except for Tari, played more than 2 years, or more than 1 year, actually. Tari played 2, more than 1 year at collegiate basketball level. It's hard, Frank, like you talked about, to be able to build those fundamentals you need to have. And that's why they're struggling here, right? We can see the effort, and honestly, the effort's been better. I have to give them credit. It needs to continue to be consistent. But the lack of effort with a not so good technique and fundamentals is going to create problems for you. I don't think that's so hard to be able to see. And I don't know who that goes on. Does that go on the organization of that not putting together the right pieces to do it? Does it go on for them to selecting very raw players? Like, what is the structure in mind for these raw players? You can want to create a fun culture that you're trying to be able to implement, but fun culture has to also mean growth in technique and fundamentals. And I think, Frank, and for listeners of Chop Shop out there right now who are listening to us, I think that's what we want to see. We want to see growth.
Yeah.
At macro level growth doesn't just come from those micro skills I talked about. It comes from a collective effort, not just to improve a closeout, but do it consistently to a point where the rest of the team benefits, and then you're seeing that macro growth from it. And I think you're absolutely right. That's what Rockets fans want.
Yeah, I mean, you just that's we could take that to church. Now I'm looking at some of their offensive their play styles, and I was looking. I was curious about just to see how they profiled, because I think one of the identity issues is the fact that they don't have a true offensive identity. Because to me, our players are so the skill sets, because I don't think they've been acquiring talent based on fit. It's really looks like just let's get guys that we can swing on and see
And
what
that's
happens.
Stone's philosophy. When, like I said,
Yeah.
like when I used to attend those press conferences, Stoney would even say, they're trying to find the best talent. And this goes back to Daryl Morey days, Frank. Right? We heard this from Daryl Morey. Talent can fit; they can work itself out, but you're trying to accumulate as many pieces that are talented, that can have a high ceiling as possible. So you give yourself a chance to do it. And I think, Frank, you're right. And sorry for interrupting, but I think you're right that this is something that we have to start thinking about. You have good pieces potentially who have that ceiling. Is it better to continue drafting with ceiling in mind or fit in mind?
I think one of the key, the missing ingredients is the grounder for all that talent is the star player, and which to me it's almost impossible to have a team direction without having a guy.
Okay.
And I don't know if we have a guy yet defined. I mean, right now, our play style profile, we run the most pick and roll, well, fourth most pick and rolls in the NBA. We're the 29th worst pick and roll team in the NBA, which is nuts. Isolations, yeah, we're 14th in isolation, 20th in spot ups, 7th in handoffs, and dead last coming off screens. We're the only team that profiles like that, because most of the teams in NBA, they have 2 or 3 play styles that they're real heavy in, and it's kind of their identity. If you have a team that's really ISO, they're going to usually ISO pick and roll. It's like the two of them because they get their mismatches, et cetera, et cetera. You have the teams like Golden State that are coming off screens. They're going to be handoffs and screens. That's their offense. We're all over the place with what we do. And once again, building up to a time or like next season, we probably don't have the incentive to tank or be a bad team. I just don't see, honestly, with all these guys, without them having to move with like half the team out and bring in some ringers to kind of fill in and instant structure and do all that, I really don't see a path to them being whatever people are expecting them to be next season coming up.
I'll be very honest with you, Frank. You got 9, like I said, 9 guys 21 or younger entering this season. If you're a Rockets front office member, you don't want to give up on these players a year or two in. You want to see it out. You want to give them potentially into the end of their rookie deals, or at least their third year. Kevin McKellar used to say, you don't know, you are who you are in the NBA after 3 or 4 seasons, or not even 3 to 4 seasons for some of these players. So I don't think they're going to give up on them, right? And this is Stone's first and second drafts, besides KJ Martin was a second round pick, but once he got into the Jalen draft and the Jabari draft, these are his first 2 drafts, right? And so I don't think he's going to want to give up on some of these players he's very high on as well. And so I don't really see personally between you and I any sense that they're going to trade half the team or move all these players, right? Like you said, Frank, it doesn't make sense right now. And with that in mind, we're going to be in the situation where this roster is going to look very similar going into next season. But it can look similar. But Frank, I gotta ask you, what is your litmus test for growth for these guys? What are
for next season?
For next season, what are we trying to see? At least maybe post All-Star break, going into next season as a sense of, okay, you know what? Now I know these guys are starting to get it, or just starting to figure it out. What are you trying to see from that?
Honestly, I think it's really hard to implement something new, but they have to salvage these next 30 whatever games are left. And I think what I'd like to see is not really growth, because I think the growth is like it's a ongoing process. So I know they're going to get better, but I think I like what I'm seeing with how they're playing with Jalen and Kevin Porter out. So what happens when Jalen and Kevin Porter come back? If we're still running the 4th most pick and rolls in the NBA and banging our heads against the wall on that, having one of the worst pick and roll points per possession in the NBA, then to me, that's just a structural and an organizational failure on their part. I want our guys to be put in positions where we can truly assess what their strengths are. Jalen Green, for example, runs a lot of ISOs. He does run a lot of pick and rolls. He's not terrible in pick and rolls, but everything about his game speaks to what you spoke of earlier. He's a movement guy. Get him moving to get shots. He can't generate space by himself right now. Get him off of screens. To me, he profiles like Steph Curry as far as what his shot output and like not, he can't shoot like Steph. Y'all don't pack me up for that. But I'm saying that how Steph struggles to generate space and isolation, Jalen suffers from the same issue. But I think with his speed and his movement, they should explore moving him more. I've seen a little bit of it.
Yeah. I
Kevin
mean, he
Porter
draws
Jr.
fouls at a high rate too, right?
at a high rate,
And
gets
so it's
downhill.
like that's a good thing. Like we're not saying get him the ball. Like, I mean, don't get him the ball and all those things. Get him the ball, but maybe something closer to the rim. Like I had seen before, or the couple games before he got injured, they were running Sengun and Jalen dribble handoffs, not outside of the 3-point line, but inside the 3-point line. Now, what does that do? That puts the defense in a tougher situation because it makes it easier for Jalen to get closer to the rim without a help defender there. Do some of those things. Nobody's saying not to give him the ball, but give him the ball in situations where, like you said, he's not having to create the advantage for himself far away from the 3-point line or far away from the basket, sorry, but give him a chance to be able to make those advantages closer towards the rim will kind of get him going. But sorry, I know you were going on KPJ.
No, that's facts. And I know they do try. I do see I think one of the favorite plays you always point out is the Chicago. I know they try to get him moving and get him downhill coming off of that action off the screen. And I know Eric Gordon is also a guy they like to do that with.
Yes.
And to me, he gets a lot of fouls out of when he gets downhill into the paint off of that. But to the plays where he's doing the step back threes and he's trying to beat, it's just not. I mean, maybe one day he can work towards that. Low key, Jalen Green's bag is really tiny as a basketball player. As far as just generating, I know his handles has improved, but not really that much. But just to the question you asked, can they learn to play with a style that focuses on ball movement? And then I think there's two parts to that: the players and then the team and the front offices buy into what the ingredients of the talent is right now. I feel like there's a mismatch between the ideal of what they want to do with the players and what the players can actually do. And I think we're running out of time where I know you said they don't want to give up on these players, but this is a business at the end of the day and people's jobs. What Silas, there's been a lot of rumors about his job. I think after maybe a season or two, if we're still like, hey, we're learning with these young guys, Stone's job may start becoming in question. And I think self-preservation will make people do a lot of stuff that they don't want to do.
I mean, do you see Tillman on? He usually sits mid-court. He sits.
Yeah.
Have you been seeing him mid-court?
Nah, he's his son is out there sometimes. I've seen Stone, but I don't see him as. I think he's hot, man.
Why would he want to see this product? I'm not saying maybe he's busy. I'm not trying to.
Listen, bro. This dude was out on ESPN when we was winning. I know Tillman is allowed. He likes to show himself.
Do you think Tillman is happy with this product? Absolutely not. He's probably been. In credit to Tillman, he's been patient. He's letting this team be able to accumulate draft capital. Bring in these players that they have high ceilings and see what they can do, right? But I don't think he's going to be satisfied if they keep on this path moving forward. 3 straight seasons potentially with 20 wins or less.
Yeah,
that's not something that you want to tip your cap on, right? You want to see some sort of growth.
Yep. So going into next year, I mean, obviously we have a deadline coming up, possibly Eric Gordon trade. That's like a holiday now in Houston, Texas. The Eric Gordon trade rumors. You get a winter break. You get Valentine's Day. Eric Gordon trade doesn't happen. Easter, then summer. So with that coming up, we don't know what this roster is going to look like. But I'm going to kind of give you what I think, and I kind of want to hear what you think starting the 23-24 season. Who's the starting 5 right now? So, looking at it right now, I think Kevin Porter is going to be here for sure. I know people are torn on him. I still have hope in him as a basketball player. I don't think he's going to be the point guard that's going to be closing games out for you at PG in the playoffs or whatever. But as a hooper, as a basketball player, as a talent, I think you still want to kind of assess what he has. So he's there. Jalen Green, obviously, that's a no-brainer. I think Jabari Smith is going to be there for sure. Sengun, I've said this on Spaces and Rockets Rewatch. I think he's probably the best tangible asset we have on the team right now that a lot of teams would want as far as impact right now, rather than building and developing like Jalen and Jabari. Some people think that's controversial. I don't mean he's a more talented player. He might be, but I'm talking about just like the Washington Wizards. If they're trying to make the playoffs, the GM is about to get fired, and they look at the Houston Rockets roster and they see, man, which player would I want to trade for? Maybe in a package to move out some guy that the Rockets might like that can impact my team right now. I think Alperen Sengun is that guy, probably for a lot of those mid-tier teams that, man, this dude brings an instant offensive system to our team right now. So I think the draft is going to be funny. I don't know, man. I have
What
a feeling
happens if you don't get top 2 pick?
That's what I'm saying. I'm trading out, brother. I'm trading out. I can't. Will we just complain about? I don't want to add 2 more 19 and 20-year-olds to this team because you're just delaying more time. If it's not top 3, I'll say top 3 because I'm still not sure who the third guy is going to be. I want to wait for the tourney, but I'm trading out, man. And if I'm trading out, I'm thinking teams are looking at the roster, and Alp is probably. I wouldn't do this, but I'm just saying, like, Alp is the prime. He is the guy that you trade for with the upside swing, and think baby Jokic, and think of a thing where you give up picks. You're getting all these picks from Houston, and your centerpiece of that is going to be Alperen Sengun. I mean, that's an appetizing that's something that looks appetizing to me. But if he is here, obviously he's starting. And then so the KJ thing, I think KJ's probably gone. I've just heard too many rumors about him and all this stuff. I think they're going to try to trade him, hit while the iron's hot. He has a team option next year, only $2 million. I think he's a great contract. I'd keep him. But if KJ's gone, I'm hoping Tari's going to start. So we got Jalen, KPJ, Tari, Bari, and Sengun starting 5 next year. I think the bench is going to be cleared out, because I do believe that we're going to try to at least be competitive. And if we're going to do that, we cannot have Dacian Nix, Garrison Matthews, Boban, waste of a roster spot, in my opinion. Bruno Fernando, borderline NBA player, Ty, so I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking those 5 guys and some like 3 or 4 vets that we acquired via free agency and trade, and just maybe 1 or 2 of the young guys that we still have here. What does yours look like?
I think your 3 or 4 next season is going to be a veteran who's going to start. Now, I don't know who that's going to be. I don't know.
John Collins.
It'll be a 3 or 4, and I think it'll probably be a veteran that'll be starting at that point. But if I'm not looking at free agents, I'm just looking at people on the roster right now. Let me say with that caveat, who I would have starting next year, just based off of shooting, because you need shooting to be able to run a consistent offense. You have KPJ, you have Jalen. Okay. Then it gets a little interesting. I love KJ Martin. Okay. I'm only starting KJ Martin if Jabari can show me that he can hit consistently in the second half of the season. Because you can't have 2 non-shooters on the court. Or Sengun is becoming a shooter. You can't have 1.5 non-shooters on the court. You gotta have maximum 1. Ideally none. So I have KPJ, I'd have Jalen, KJ, Jabari, and then Sengun. Now let me tell you why I like those 3. I'm not even going to focus on the guards. Let's focus on the 3 to 5 I mentioned right now. I've been noticing something, Frank, that they're putting Sengun on the corner guy, and they're allowing Jabari and KJ to be able to operate and run a different system. So against who did we just play a few games ago?
OKC
against Oklahoma City. Steven Silas talked about post-game how he added some special coverages. And I was at the game, and I noticed there were some different things they were doing. And I wanted to go back and look at the film. They had a few hedges. They had a few switches. And granted, this is all when Sengun is on the floor. So I thought that was interesting. That's because Sengun was on the wing. And this is something I've been noticing for a few games now. They're going to hide him on the wing in the corner, or a shooter in the corner who's not going to necessarily move too much to maintain the offensive spacing, right? Then for everybody else, the 4 other players, they'll ideally switch the action, or they'll try to be able to play weak, which is, guide that player towards their weaker hand, right? They're doing different types of combinations with their coverages for the player. I think that's something good. I want to see more film of it to see how it works out, especially late games. But if they can do that and they can kind of hide Sengun at times, no, I'm not saying Sengun's a bad defender. He's been playing much better. But you don't want Sengun to be your defensive stopper. That's not what he's in the game for. You ideally have a guy like Jabari who can kind of close out a specific area of the court and stay in front once he gets better, especially navigating screens. You have a guy like KJ Martin who's so good at rotating over, even last minute and jumping up in the air with a second jump. Then you have KPJ who has to be more consistent, but can navigate and do well. And Jalen, who I feel like if he's switching, is not as engaged as if he would be if he's coming around screens. And so with that in mind, that's why I like that starting five. But I need KJ to not be inconsistent. There's days where he's shooting 2 or 3 from 3. Then there's days or multiple games where he goes 1 of 7 over that game span, that couple game span. I need him to be consistent. If he can be consistent and Jabari can start hitting threes just at 35%. Nobody's saying 40% like Auburn, 38%, just 35%. And you got Sengun knocking down a couple threes off of dribble handoffs here and there. That's a pretty solid team offensively to be able to operate from. And then defensively, you can hide Sengun. You can still play drop if you need to kind of, help him stay within the painted area so he's not navigating far away towards the corner. But if you need to and you want to switch and do things, just put Sengun in the corner. And, like the Jazz were successful at it for the most part of the regular season. You still probably have to figure out what you want to do in the playoffs with those guys. But look how successful the Jazz were just by hiding Gobert in most games in the regular season. They were the number 1 seed. Yep. So it's not impossible to do with Sengun, but you have to be able to make sure that your surrounding pieces can stay in front. And that's going to come down to that guard play. Can those guards navigate and stay in front? Can Jabari get better at using his frame? He wants to get bigger, which is good. But does that mean he can still navigate and stay in front? But that's going to make him even more of an asset. And then can KJ continue to be a good shot blocker and just keep his hands up, not foul, because he's capable sometimes of fouling too much. So that's what I'm thinking about for next year.
What does the bench look like for that? Do you foresee the vets coming in there?
I could, if I'm looking at, so I said starting lineup with the caveat that I don't know who the veterans are, but if let's say veterans are coming off the bench, ideally, I'm just going to say this. I don't think Eric Gordon gets traded. Be very honest with you. I don't see him getting traded.
Ouch.
I don't
that
see
hurt me, man.
I'm very strong on that. Now, if I'm wrong, I'll apologize. But as of right now, from what I know, I don't think Eric Gordon gets traded. That's just me.
Damn. You hurt me, man. I'm about to go cry after this. Go ahead, man.
I think you're gonna have Eric. Ideally, I would want Eric to start, honestly, if he can't start. But Eric, you're gonna have Ty got to get better defensively, man. I need Ty to get better defensively, knock some threes down. If he can do that, then he can be a guard. But I think ideally they're gonna have a better backup point guard. I just think it's paramount at this point. Tari, Eason, and then I think you need a backup big. You got to have a backup big. I don't care if it's Andre Drummond. I don't care if it's Thomas Bryant, Damian Jones. You got to have a backup big. And honestly, one guy I would look at is Wenyen Gabriel. With Thomas Bryant's resurgence with the Lakers, Wenyen's out of the rotation. I just want a guy who can come in and play me some energy minutes so I can have Jabari and Sengun rotate as the fives, right? So ideally, I want I really like Wenyen Gabriel as a potential backup big as well, and just at least bring a guy who can provide you some energy minutes. But you notice I didn't say a lot of different other guys.
Yeah, I know a lot of the.
I didn't say Jayshawn Tate because I don't know what's going to happen with Jayshawn. I personally will tell you I love Jayshawn. He's one of my favorite players on the roster to watch. But right now, is he going to fit? If there's a new coach, is he going to fit the system of the team? I still think Jayshawn's still here, and I still think he's going to get a lot of playing time next year. Wouldn't even surprise me if he's starting because he's that good of a player as a connector with the glue that we talk about. Not a connector with the system, but a connector as a glue guy. But it remains to be seen what happens. But I do think based off of that, that's kind of what I'm looking at off the bench.
I'm looking at, and that's a very feasible lineup. My thing with the Tari thing is that Tari is such a positive on the court with Sengun that
I agree.
I really want to explore because another thing that with Tari and Jabari, one thing I saw during the summer league is when they're adjacent to each other on defense, it really almost shuts down a whole half of the court because they're so long. They're switchable with each other, interchangeable as a two-man duo on defense, and just to me, the perfect type of wings that you want around the Alperen Sengun. And I just want to explore that more. A lot of the stuff with Jabari and his defense is his on-ball defense is pretty good, like isolation defense, especially on the perimeter. But he sucks as a team defender right now, man. Like he gets, I mean, this dude, and I was surprised to really
Frank
see that.
dropping facts, man. Oh my god.
Yeah, like I was surprised to see how bad he was because he's touted as the defensive 3-and-D kind of a big wing forward, whatever he is. But the team defense, I mean, he's 19, so I'm not like saying he can never be good. I know he will be good, in fact, because I feel like he has the want to and the IQ. But as a team defender, a lot of those pick and rolls that we get burnt on is because he's not helping over as the person that's supposed to be helping with the
If
tags.
you want to gamble, you can gamble, but you gotta be in position, man. It's like what's
Right.
one thing to have long arms, and it's one thing to kind of step like when he steps in, for example, like you're saying, like when his help, when he actually commits, and he can get those steals.
Yeah.
We've seen it. He can
Yep.
do it, but you gotta be consistent, man.
He's always late. Like the guy's already dunking and he'll be like walking into their back. When Tari does it, Tari is really good at that.
Mm.
And KJ is good at that. And I think I don't know if it's just him being young, not understanding the schematics of a team defense, but I mean the plus minuses with him off and on the court is just like, I mean, yeah, he's in pretty
He
much
has
all
a
our
nose for the ball, man. He knows where to be. He knows where to
right.
be, especially
So
rebounding. I mean, look at him. He's one of the best rebounders. He's not a big man.
yeah,
He's
he's
a
a gun.
grown man though. Let me tell you, his frame though, that dude's a
Yep.
grown man. He I think to me is a cheat code for the Rockets because they can mold his body. He's already has an NBA level body. They
Yep.
can mold his body into something even better because
Yep.
he's big, man. And if they can do him the right things and get him to be able to come up with a consistent dribble to at least attack closeouts and pass off those closeouts versus just having the tunnel vision, which he's growing from. We're seeing that a little
Yep.
bit. If he can do that consistently, he can be a damn good player in this league.
I think he has super high upside as a wing because he's not a two-dimensional player. And I love
Yeah.
that in players. And I think that, he's going to be a great pick. Jabari, to me, the frame as well for Jabari, I think he's going to be yoked up in like 3 or 4 years.
Dude, I would not surprise me if he has that. If you look at his shoulders, they're very
Yep.
different players. He has Jason Tatum shoulders.
Yep. He
And
does.
if he adds frame and he gets that Jason Tatum type of like upper body,
He's going to be a big dude.
I wouldn't even. I'm not comparing them. The Giannis comparisons, I personally don't like too much. But the Giannis body frame, oh my god! Just look at Jabari's shoulders. Look at Jabari from the back, and look at Giannis from the back when he was younger. Very similar players in how they're built up.
His dad said it. Like that's who they want him to look like. Like they've said that's the goal. And I think Jabari is like a workout warrior. So I know he's gonna get there. The shooting, I'm not super concerned. I think he has some things to work out with that.
Yeah.
I think the Rockets could do a little better job of providing their young guys resources with that. I think the coaches are great, but I feel like they're doing too much at one time. You're trying to put out fires with just basic concepts of basketball. You're trying to put out fires with where to be on defense, dealing with egos, playing time, and all that. So a lot of the fine extra stuff gets missed out, and I think shooting's one of them because the team sucks across the board.
Yep.
So they might need to invest in that. But yeah, I think overall, I am disappointed. Kind of, I thought we were going to be better as a team for where we are now, but it is what it is. I am excited about this season. What is let me put you on the spot real quick before we go. What is a win total? If you had to put a number on how many wins the Rockets in 23-24, what is your number right now?
I mean, they're at 13-38 right now as we're recording this show. Maybe let's say they end with 20. I like to see them get 30. 30-52, 35-48.
Next season?
30. I want to see them get closer to the upper 20s or 30s. Okay. I think what fans' expectations are of wins jumping like super high, they can happen. And I'm not saying it can't happen with the Rockets, but it's hard in the NBA, especially with the parity that we have in the league now. I mean, look at the Toronto Raptors where the Rockets are playing Friday night. They're 23-30 right now, and they got a good collection of talent. right?
Yep.
It's hard to win in this league. And so it's like, I'm not saying that I don't want them to be good. I don't think they'll be better. But going from a perennial 20-win team to like a 40-win team I think is tough, or even a 30-win team. I think lower 30s, upper 20s for me would be a great progress type of check for me. Just 30s, just lower 30s. Give me lower 30s and I'll be ecstatic because I see the progress. But if you get me in the upper 20s, and I'll say, you know what? At least we're moving in the right direction. Yeah.
Yep. And I think upper 20s, lower 30s is almost a prerequisite to get to that jump that people assume that they're going to
Yeah.
have. And once we see that, then you can kind of tell that, okay, they're kind of ready. It might be higher. I don't know. Depends on any free agents. I know the James Harden things. Hell, we could draft Wemby and do this and do that. But
Yeah.
realistically for me, I'm with you. I thought we were going to be what I'm assuming we're going to be this year.
This year.
But
Yeah.
I'm going to say probably upper 20s. I think is realistic enough. We'll just see what happens. But Alykhan, man, I appreciate you, brother, for coming through on the Chop Shop. We got to do this more often. Love talking ball with you, bro. Where can people find you at, man?
Yeah, man, we're the film guys. We got to be able to chop it up some more. I think people would like this. You can follow me on Twitter at Rockets_insider and follow me on TikTok. I post film studies on there at Rockets Insider as well on TikTok. But Frank, appreciate you, man. Yeah, I'd love to do this again soon.
Yes, sir. You know what I'm gonna do? We may have to do a joint film session, bro, for the culture. So we gonna have to set that up.
I got the telestration tool. Let's make this happen.
Let's go. So we'll set that up, man. Appreciate you, man. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thanks for coming through.